What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, and the current version of Brigitte on the PTR is perhaps her best version we've ever had. Not because she's particularly strong, in fact it's quite the opposite, but rather because for the first time ever, she actually feels like she's filling the role that Blizzard intended for her. But what exactly is this role, and more importantly, how is it going to affect the game as a whole? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video, so let's get started. As I'm sure literally everybody has been aware of at this point, Brigitte has been a rather oppressive hero ever since her release. She's received nerf after nerf after nerf, and yet is still a menace in both quick play and competitive scenes, and overall an incredibly conflicting hero when it comes to whether she fills a necessary role of countering dive, or if she's way too strong with her crowd control and power. The vast majority of the nerfs that Brigitte got leading up to this most recent PTR version had to do with increasing cooldowns and generally reducing the effectiveness of her shield bash and crowd control overall. However, it's only with this most recent version that I think Blizzard has actually succeeded in making her effectively function in the role she was intended to have, which is to peel for the primary healer and tanks on her team. While she's absolutely been capable of doing this the entire time to great effect, her ability to stand on the front line and stun incoming Reinhardts and just basically slaughter anyone she 1v1s ultimately ended up making her a character that was, well, basically a DPS in a lot of ways. Up until now, she's been way too good of a DPS, which led her to be played in situations which were clearly against Blizzard's intent. By no means is she supposed to be the one leading the charge into the enemy team, but rather she's supposed to be sort of on the back, protecting her healers from incoming flankers. Her team's actual tanks should be on the front line taking all the damage, and then she stands behind them to protect both them and the team's main healer from flankers such as Genji and Tracer. And she's still quite effective at doing this. Even with the damage reduction on her shield bash and the inability to bash through enemy barriers, she can still ward off an enemy Tracer and Genji that are coming in through the back. She might not be as effective at straight out killing them when they come in for an engagement, but she's still perfectly strong enough to ward them off and deter them from even running a Tracer or Genji. So even with her nerfed shield bash, in addition to the fact that she still doles out a ton of armor, makes her still an effective counter to dive comps. Keep in mind, these changes are almost certainly going to make her much more of a niche pick. She can't just run against any composition and be at least a little effective. You're basically only going to want to use her when the enemy team has a Tracer and Genji and are trying to harass your backline. Now, I should note that it is just the PTR. It's not the best environment to test out different team compositions and hero effectiveness, so as for whether or not her current state will be truly successful in maintaining this new role, which is technically her original role, or if it's going to require a bit more rework, we really don't know just yet. But it does seem very clear that Blizzard, of course, doesn't want to just delete Brigitte, but rather is trying to redefine her into what she was always meant to be. And to be honest, I'm incredibly optimistic about this going forward. Personally, I've never been one to get particularly annoyed with Brigitte. Yeah, she was clearly overpowered for a good long period of time, but I by no means want her to just die off completely. So I do think these nerfs are pretty good and are gonna put her in a much better position in terms of how the game overall should be balanced. I don't think they're gonna kill her off outright. There might be some additional tweaking, either slight additional nerfs and buffs needed in order for her to actually get into the right position, but overall, I think they are definitely a step in the right direction, where she's no longer this super powerful pick, but rather is much more niche and is still very effective at doing what she's supposed to do, which is peel for her supports and tanks and counter dive. No more 1v1ing 90% of the hero roster, and certainly no more leading charges into the enemy team. That's definitely a job for the real tanks, and thankfully it looks like that's the way it's gonna be. Now, I do still need to address the notorious GOATS comp, the triple tank, triple support, and what exactly is gonna end up happening to this following these Brigitte nerfs. Well, I've heard a number of mixed ideas about what could end up happening. A lot of people seem to think that GOATS could even get stronger, more so due to the nerfs to Doomfist rather than the nerfs to Brigitte, Brigitte, and to be fair, I think that could possibly be the case. I do think it's a little too early to know for sure what's going to end up playing out. However, when it comes down to it, despite Brigitte being a crucial component of the GOAT's composition, nerfing her directly isn't really the best solution to nerfing GOAT's comp. In order to effectively nerf Brigitte to the point that she can't function in GOAT's compositions, you would have to nerf her to the point where she's just flat out useless overall. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would love that, but that's not the best solution when you're looking at how to balance the game properly for all the heroes concerned. While I'm no pro-scene meta expert, I do think that the best course of action in countering GOAT's comp would be to increase the effectiveness of anti-tank heroes. Reaper, Junkrat, and dare I say yes, Bastion should all be looked at when considering how to actually counter this composition, rather than just directly nerfing the heroes involved. Overwatch is a game all about counters, whether you like the idea of hard counters being a thing or not. I think buffing heroes who counter an annoying composition should often be considered just as much as nerfing the heroes who make up that composition. And of course, I am no game designer, so I don't really have anything specific to suggest in how to buff heroes like Reaper, Junkrat, or Bastion, or any other sort of anti-tank components the game may have, but I do think that people should focus a bit more on considering that side of the nerfing GOATs argument, as opposed to simply nerfing the heroes involved. Ultimately, the solution could very well require a little bit of both, and I am certainly optimistic about Blizzard's ability to eventually find a solution, eventually being the key word. Anyways, in closing, I think the important thing is that Brigitte is not a dead hero. These recent nerfs have certainly made her much weaker, but in doing so, I definitely feel like they've made her more a niche pick in the original direction that Blizzard intended her to fill. It'll definitely be a rough transition, especially for those who regularly play Brigitte, but I do think ultimately it is going to bring the game as a whole into a better state. In hindsight, it's actually kind of amazing that we've gone this long with Brigitte being in the position she's been, especially considering that in this nerfed state, she's still entirely viable, especially in the designated situations. Of course, it will end up taking more time to see how she ends up panning out, and whether or not she does require a bit more tweaking and adjustment beyond what we have currently, but for the most part, I have to say, I actually like her current state on the PTR. Yes, it'll take a bit to get used to, but ultimately, I think it is going to benefit the game. And there you go, these have been my thoughts on the current PTR version of Brigitte. Feel free to let me know in the comments down below whether you agree with my points about her filling a new role now, or if you strongly disagree and think she's either still drastically OP or 100% dead. Either way, be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and share it with a friend if you really liked it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and turn on notifications to keep up with all my future Overwatch news and content. This is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, let's really hope that Brigitte is in fact for the better now, and have a great day.